Some people rock and some people roll. Some will make you giggle right down to your soul. So talk to the world and introduce them to you. And look at me now, I'm on Barbara and you. You gotta take a step inside the shoes of another. Get to know your neighbor, get to know one another. So talk to the world and introduce them to you. And look at me now, I'm on Barbara and you.
Good evening and welcome to the Barbara and You Show, again from my kitchen, but you all understand how that works. But I'm so excited and so pleased that all the guests that I've had scheduled have been willing to do it in Zoom fashion. So here we are. And before I introduce you to my first guest, I want to tell you who will be joining me for the second half of the program. And that will be Charlie Smith, who is an Army veteran who has written and published several self-help books. And I'm sure that will be very, very interesting. And it just happens coincidentally that both of my guests for tonight have topics that are especially meaningful right now. And my first guest is, let's see if I can say this right, Sedruola Maruska. How'd I do? Did I do? But now I'm going to call her Sadie. She said I could call her Sadie.
Perfect. You did it perfectly. But yes, Sadie is much easier.
And thank you,
Barbara.
well, thank you for being here. And like I said, I don't often try to get two guests that have similar topics or that complement each other. And in your case, and Charlie's with his self-help books, and you being someone who is a life coach and you concentrate on goal setting, I think both of you have a lot to tell our viewers that is very special right now. And when I was reading your bio, I related to the fact that you said what you're doing and all that you teach stems from three things in your personal life. You're a cancer survivor, you're a mother, and you're self-employed as a business owner. Well, I am too, all three of those things. And we surprise ourselves sometimes what we learn and that we can do more than we think we can. And I think that's a lot of what you do, motivating people, is not to limit themselves. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much, Barbara. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And you so right. I didn't even realize that you were also a cancer survivor. But I do believe that certain things happen along our paths, and at times they can dim our brightness, the brilliance that I sincerely believe that every person and every woman, especially as being a woman, has a brilliance about her. And that brilliance gets dulled along the way because of things that happen to us along our life's journey. Whether it's a diagnosis, whether it's a loss, whatever it is, our brilliance gets dulled. And for me, my mission is to uncover that brilliance and to show women how they can not only change so that they can shine into the world and change their world, but they can change their lives completely when they, as you say, begin to believe in what the possibilities are of what they can do. Mm-hmm. So and as you know, when you get diagnosed with cancer, I don't know about you, but the first thing for me was you have invasive lobular carcinoma. And that was the last thing I heard in the whole time. Thank goodness my husband was there to be able to answer questions. But my brain went from invasive lobular carcinoma to, oh my God, what's going to happen to my children? What am I doing with my life? And all those questions that we sometimes push to the back. And it was really a time where I just I did a lot of self-reflection, and I realized, you know what? I don't think I'm doing what, number one, I'm meant to do, and number two, I really, really want to be doing. And that pushed me to also look back into my history to see where it is possible that light actually dimmed itself.
Well, and
What happened to dim that light?
while it oftentimes it is a health issue with people, there are things like what we're going through right now that none of us have any control over. And I noticed in your bio that you had a lot of events planned, that you were going to be doing some teaching in the schools, educating the junior high kids. You had a lot of things coming up, and all that has changed. So what are we doing about all that?
Yes, all of that changed. I was in the middle. Actually, I was in 4 weeks 4 weeks into doing a goals workshop with middle schoolers, and we had to stop. And then I was scheduled to do a speaking engagement in April, and that got canceled. And of course, you go, great. What do I do now? And as you say, what do you do now? Well, there was no way to actually reschedule anything that was being done with the school, because as you know, all the schools are now closed for the rest of the school year. And we will see what happens in the fall, depending on what happens during the summer. But that is always going to be something that I will re-pursue as soon as we are able to, again, gather and get together and actually do certain things. If we're not able to get together in that way, I'm ready to pivot and do it like this, via video, and just because the information can be shared in many ways. So I'm ready to do it this way. The speaking engagement I was going to do, they did not have it set up for anyone to do it virtually, so that was completely canceled. However, I'm now looking for opportunities to do speaking engagements like this on camera in my home, because people still need to get the information, and people can still get the information. I'm also doing coaching this way, speaking to people as if we're in the same room together, even though we're not, but getting a feel and being able to see someone's face and exchange ideas in this way is so helpful. And I actually think it's the wave of the future.
Well, and it sounds like you've certainly learned to turn your frustrations into something productive. Have you always been an optimistic person?
For the most part, I do believe that I've always been an optimistic person. I always, in every change and in every situation, like even in this situation, I look at it and I go, okay, so this is what's happening, but what's the opportunity here? What's the lesson that I can learn here? And what are the pros to this situation? My son is 13, my daughter is 9, and we've had so much time to just be able to do puzzles together, to do games together, to binge watch television together, things that, you know, my 13-year-old will be running off to be with his friends a lot of the time, and that we would not normally get to do. So I really appreciate this time. At the same time, it can be a little frustrating not to be able to go anywhere. But you know, there's always something that's good in any situation. Even as I look at my cancer journey, I learned about my cancer 3 days before we were going off on a vacation that had been planned for a year. And I thought, man, the timing is impeccable. I got diagnosed on Wednesday. I had all my scans on Thursday. On Friday, I got the all clear that it was only in one place that we were going to fight this cancer. Saturday, we left, and I left cancer behind. And, you know, you just kind of have to roll with the punches and see where you land and what you can do with the place that you are.
Well, and I think something that's different about this is that we're not alone. Everybody's in the same boat. Our family had to cancel our trip to Disney World, which had been planned for over a year. I planned a family reunion in Ohio over a year ago that looks like we're going to have to cancel. We've got it for the end of July, but I just don't think that's going to happen. But I didn't tell a lot about you initially. And I wanted to let the audience know, because doing this virtually, we've done people from New York City on the show recently for talking about the census. But you are a local gal, aren't you?
I am. I live in Lancaster, and I love it because it's a quiet, sleepy town. And I never thought I would ever say that in my life because I am a New York City bred girl.
Oh.
So to be in Lancaster and to say, oh, it's great to be in the sleepy town it goes to show you that you never know where you're going to land in life, and you just got to make the best of wherever you are. So it has definitely been a good thing for us to be here with the kids. And my parents also live here, which is how we ended up here. But yes.
Right. Well, the way you described that reminded me of one of the topics that you just sometimes talk about when you're giving motivational speeches. And it's called, I can't believe I did that.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You want to expand on that statement?
I do. So the topic, I can't believe I did that, is something that I feel that we say that a lot. Many times we do things and we come out on the other end and we're like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I had cancer and now I'm on the other side. What I think it is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. We tell ourselves this story of what we allow ourselves to believe about ourselves. And so when something falls outside of the parameter of what we're believing about ourselves, we say, I can't do that. I would never be able to handle that. We see someone else doing something that seems incredible and we go, I would never be able to do that. And then something comes along and puts us in the position where now we have to decide, are we going to expand our thinking of ourselves, or are we going to expand, or are we going to stay with the limited thought of, I can't do that? A lot of times when something comes, if we allow ourselves to say, okay, you know what, this is here, as I've said, this is here, cancer is here, how am I going to deal with it? We get to the other side and we're like, wow, I did that. What else can I do? Because now we've expanded the thought process. We've expanded the ability we have to think of ourselves in certain situations. And we go, what else can I do? I got through cancer. What else can I do? Well, you know what else I can do? I can go out there and I can share my story and I can help someone else get through it because I can give them the strength that they maybe don't think that they have, but I have an overabundance of right now. So I can give them that and allow them to see themselves a little differently. And then when they get through it, they can go, wow, I did that. What else can I do? And then it becomes kind of a ripple effect that goes out. So I can't believe I did that is limiting. Don't say you can't believe you did that. Look at it and say, I did that. I did that. Now what can I do? Now where can I go? Now who can I inspire? Now what can I create that's going to make a difference in my world or in the world at large? So that's where that is.
And as you were saying that, I'm going to put you on the spot now, and you'll give you a minute or two to think about it. But when you've gone out and you've addressed groups and you've talked to women who maybe are going through something very difficult, and you know you're getting through to them, can you think of one particular instance without naming names where you really felt like you changed somebody's life?
Yes. One stands out in particular, and this wasn't even a group. I was driving Uber. So before all of this, I was Uber driver. And a lady got in my car and she said to me, she says, you know where we're going? And I looked at the app and I said, yes, I know where we're going. She said, oh, okay. She says, because I just wanted to make sure that you were going to the right place. I said, yeah, that's no problem. I noticed that she was going to Brigham and Women's Cancer Center. And she said, I'm just so nervous. She said, this is my first treatment, and I'm just so nervous. And so I said, oh, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say so much. And I said, you know what? I'm a cancer survivor. She said, really? And I said, yes. And she said, and I said, what kind of cancer are you fighting? She said, breast cancer. I said, well, I'm a breast cancer survivor. And she said, oh my gosh. She said, and I said, you know what? I so understand where you are. I said, but I want you to know something. You can do this. I said, it's scary right now, and you're going to go through it, and I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be easy. I said, but you can do this, and when you do this, you're going to feel so good afterwards. And she said, oh my God, she said, thank you so much. She said, people just don't understand, you know, they're worried, and I'm worried, and I have little kids, and I'm worried about my kids. And I said, I so understand that part. And I said, you're going to be fine. And one thing that I learned as a breast cancer survivor, and this is probably just me, I don't know, but when someone tells me that they have cancer, I no longer say I'm sorry, because I'm not sorry for you. I am standing with you, and I know that you can do this. The first thing I always say is, wow, you can do this, because it is so important for people to know what their strengths are, and to know that this comes because you can handle it. You can handle it. So before she got out of the car, she said, I am so glad that you picked me up today. She said, because I was feeling so scared, and I was feeling so nervous. And I said, but you can do this. She says, now I think I really can do this. Thank you so much. And that story, that person will never leave my mind, because that, of course, after I drove away, I was tears, and I was like, I'm so glad that I picked her up. And because when you know that you've made a difference in that way, it's the best feeling ever. And it just validates, and it says, you know what, this is what you're meant to do. Keep doing more of that. You know, if you're a good cook, keep doing more of that. If you're this, keep doing more of that.
Well, I think you and I probably agree that it wasn't a coincidence that she ended up in your car that day. The Lord puts people together, and there's a reason that things like that happen. And I have just learned from you what I'm going to put that into effect when you hear that someone has cancer, how important it is to be encouraging rather than say, oh, you poor dear. Yeah. Thank you. That helps me tremendously. And I remember when I was first diagnosed, I asked my doctor, at what point do you become a cancer survivor? And he said, the minute you're diagnosed.
That's right.
And here we are, both smiling and doing well. Let me take you to another statement I read that you sometimes talk about. Leisure is not for the weak, W-E-A-K. I don't get that. Explain it.
What I find when I speak to women, a lot of women, and also what I found as having gone through cancer and needing to stop, not just slow down, but just stop, almost just doing the bare essentials, is that we're socialized to believe that if someone is taking downtime, or if someone is not busy, then they're of no value, basically. So we see each other and we say, how are you? And you say, oh, I'm so busy, because it's like the new status symbol. I'm so busy. Whereas downtime is harder to do in this culture than to say I'm busy, and to busy ourselves with things that just move our bodies and have no effect on anything of importance in our lives. We feel like we're always supposed to be moving, busy, which is why I say that leisure is not for the weak. You have to be strong in your conviction and in your understanding that you need time out. You need time to connect with yourself. You need time to color. You need time to listen to music. You need time to read. You need time to take a walk. You need time to allow your brain and your body to recoup. So but society makes us feel like if we're taking that time, then we're selfish or we're lazy or we're weak. And leisure is not for the weak. It's actually for those who are really strong-willed and strong-minded about what needs to happen in their lives and who are clear about the most important things and put their energy towards those things and don't feel they have to be busy all the time. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, you're right, though. We tend to act like being busy is a badge of honor. Oh, look at me, I'm very busy.
Yes.
But we say,
Yes.
oh, I feel, and I find that because of the slowdown, the lockdown has caused us to slow down. I find a lot of people, myself included, are taking the time to try to take at least a 30-minute walk every day. And if you're not interacting with other people and you've got your mask on or whatever, it's freeing. And like you were saying, you mentioning different things you can do, they spark some other creativity and some other ideas in your mind while you're doing those leisurely activities.
Actually, leisure allows you to be more productive in those things where you actually need to be busy. So in your job, leisure, taking time for leisure, taking time to just leave everything behind and just do what it is that you're doing allows you to come back with a clearer perspective and a more focused activity on that whatever it is that you're doing. We're doing puzzles. I love puzzles.
Are you talking jigsaw? Are you doing jigsaw puzzles?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love jigsaw puzzles. But when I sit there and I start to not be able to find any more pieces, I go, you know what? I need to walk away. And I walk away and I stop, and then maybe I'll come back later. Maybe I'll just wait until tomorrow. It's going to just be there. Things are going to be there. Work, whatever it is going to be there. My laundry sits in a basket in my bedroom and it piles up. And I, every once in a while I go, okay, 15-minute timer. I'm folding clothes for 15 minutes. And then 15 minutes is done. There's still more laundry in there. I'm like, it's always going to be there. So I just need to allow myself the space to say, it's okay if it doesn't get done right this second. It's okay to walk away and to take some time and to think about it. Even with my work stuff, when I'm thinking about creating new coaching projects or creating new booklets or creating whatever it is that I'm thinking of creating, if I'm sitting there and I'm staring at my computer simply to say that I'm busy or that I'm looking at my computer, I'm working, I'm wasting time. I'm wasting valuable downtime because my brain's not really working on what I think I'm working on. It's all the way over here doing something else. So why don't I just go do something else? And then I can come back and look at it again and say, oh, I had this idea in the shower or as I was walking or while I was playing with the kids or whatever it is, I had this idea, write it down and get back to the focus. So it's just a matter of realizing that busy is not great. So this is something else that I've worked on is saying, when people say, oh, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm fine. And when I say, how are you? And they say, well, I'm so busy. I'm like, oh, rather than saying, so am I, because that is usually the thing that you feel you need to say. Oh, I know, I'm so busy too. No, I'm actually not that busy. but I'm focused on things that are important to me and important to what I want to accomplish, the goals I want to get to. So always when I'm coaching, the first thing I ask and sit is, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want? Because once you know what you want, it's easier to trim certain things so that you can focus your mind on that, exactly that.
Well, you are motivating me. Hope you're motivating my audience too, and I'm sure you are. And you said some interesting things. So when you get this great idea, you write it down. And I'm a list maker. And for years, I've been making lists. But sometimes I feel like once I've got it on the list, it's off my mind, and I rarely get back to it. But also, some years ago, I don't know where I picked up this theory that jobs expand to fit the amount of time you have to do them in. And everybody I know who's isolated at this time thinks, oh, this will be a great time to work on that project or to write this article or whatever. And yet they're not getting around to it because it seems like, well, there's plenty of time to do that.
Yes.
So you talking about time management as well?
Yes. Time management is definitely a part of personal development. We think we can manage time. Time is time. Time is going to always go. It's not the time we need to manage. It's ourselves that we need to manage. We need to manage how we use our time. So it's not, when we think time management is like, how can I do more in less time? That's not the point. The point of time management is managing yourself, knowing what it is you want to accomplish a month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever time frame you pick, what you want to accomplish in that time frame, and then looking at what's essential and what isn't. When you remove what's unessential from your activities, your time will be managed because you will be managing yourself. For example, I encourage everyone who follows me and everyone who coaches with me to create a morning routine. The reason I encourage that is because if you get up in the morning and you have a routine that you go through, it calms you down enough so that you have more clarity in your day about what it is you want and don't want or need or don't need to be doing in that day. So when you get up, meditate, pray, read, exercise, take a walk, tea, whatever it is, create a morning routine. And it doesn't have to be long. It can be 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, you'll say, okay, I'm going to meditate or pray for 10 minutes. And then for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to read something inspiring. And then 10 minutes, and then for the final 10 minutes, I'm going to take a brisk walk listening to some great music.
Well,
You've now just given yourself space.
And we're talking about time management, and wouldn't you know, we're almost out of time. So I knew we'd have a great interview, Sedie, and it has been delightful. And as I said, I've learned a lot from you as well. I'm going to give you one more minute. How would you sum up what you wanted people to know?
I just want people to know that they are capable of having the things that they truly desire. I'm a coach because we all need a little help along the way. It's very hard sometimes for us to focus ourselves alone. And you know that because you've probably tried to do certain things and you've been unsuccessful because there's been no one to keep you accountable or to help you see the pitfalls as you're getting there. That's why I'm a coach. And so I want people to know that they are capable of having the lives and creating the worlds that they truly want. They just have to know what those things are. And so many times we don't really think about the bottom line of what it is that we want. And that's what I do. I help people get there. So
Okay. And one of the hardest things for me to get used to doing this method versus live in the studio is I sometimes have to interrupt people. So like I said, we're out of time, but we'll do this again someday when we can really be in person in the studio. Thank you.
it would be
so
wonderful.
much. Well, thank you for sharing your time with us. And don't you folks go away out there, because we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with Charlie Smith to tell us about his self-help books. I can talk. We'll be right back.
I am George Meridanian, and welcome to another edition of Chess Chat.
Welcome back. And as I told you earlier, my guest for this half hour is author Charles Smith. And thank you for having a nice, easy name, Charlie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm so excited. And I was saying in the earlier half, we had a woman on who was a life coach. And when I book these shows, I don't always try to get coordinating or cooperating or similar topics. But I think it's ideal that both of you talk about things that people need to hear right now, because you author self-help books, which is tremendous. And I know there's quite a few things we could talk about. Why don't we have you begin with giving me a little bit of your background, and let me thank you for your service, because you are an Army veteran. But tell our audience a little bit about your background and how you became a writer and a public speaker.
Well, I've had post-traumatic stress since I was 7 years old, with the loss of my mother, and after that, this book right here, it shows a lot of my childhood, the first 11 years, and I was orphaned by the time I was 11. I went through a lot of stuff, but I've had trauma over and over and over again in my life. And despite what a lot of people think, they think that I just had this conversation with a girl I know. She's like, how can you be so positive when you had so many things happen to you? And I just told her, you know, I grew empathy. I was also a homeless veteran about 15 years ago. And that showed me empathy, because I seen all these other people that were down and out, and I wasn't the only one. And it clicked in my head that I wasn't the only one. So after that, I started helping people with running programs at places like Veterans Inc. Like this book right here was originally this one right here, and it started as a program for Veterans Inc. and for Jeremiah Zane and some other places, and it transformed into this book here. And then I just started writing different programs, and a couple years ago, a friend of mine, Lisa Shea, reached out to me about a book signing at Barnes and Noble, because I had these online, but I wasn't really pushing them or selling them or anything. I just stopped running the programs for a little bit, so I put them out there so people can see if they want to see the product that I had. And I was the only author to sell every one of the books that I had with me. So then I said, you know what, there's something to this. So I started running my programs again. Right before the pandemic, I went back to Veterans Inc. and I ran a program for a couple of weeks with the veterans on PTSD. And they were so happy to have me back, but then it only lasted a couple of weeks. But yeah, I just like started writing all these different books. Like this book here is the first book that I actually sat down and wrote as a book. It's my fourth book, but it's the first one that I actually sat down and wrote as a book.
Charlie, I know a lot of writers,
Yeah.
and you make it sound like it came to you easily. You must have some God-given talent and ability to write.
Well, I use a lot of experience, and I try to make it so I would understand it. And I'm just now getting a bachelor's degree. I never had a degree or anything. So I wrote the books so people without a degree would be able to understand them. And
Charlie,
it just,
I'm very impressed. You're an amazing gentleman.
Thank
Did you find that writing them was also therapeutic for you?
yes, very. Yeah.
And when I read about the and I always get those initials mixed up, PTSD, most people I think associate that with veterans. And I was stunned when you said you'd lost your mother at a very early age and then orphaned totally at a few years later. And you kind of you probably didn't even know that that's what they called it.
No, they
As a
didn't
child.
they didn't even know what they called it.
Right.
I went through a lot of my life undiagnosed. I actually went into the military with PTSD. And nowadays, they would have caught on to that and they would have said, no, you can't go in. But I was undiagnosed until I became a homeless veteran. That one point in my life, that's like a crucible. And a crucible to me is something that changes one point in your life that changes your life dramatically, for lack of a better term. And that changed my life in so many ways because I was diagnosed with PTSD and I seen that I wasn't alone. It had so many positives to it.
So it felt good to know that, oh, there's a name for this, and I'm not the only one that has this.
Yeah, but once I knew how to combat it. You know, I knew how to help myself and help others.
Well, it sounds like you're somebody who's really pulled yourself up by the bootstraps, as they say.
Yeah, yep.
And what's the time frame here? Because you said you were already out of the service when you were diagnosed?
Yeah, I was out of the service. I went in the service 1993 to 1996. And say 13 years ago, I forget exactly, one of my things is loss of memory, but I think it was like 13 years ago that I was a homeless veteran. And that's common with people with post-traumatic stress too, is they lose dates in their minds. Like when I wrote this book, I was shocked at some of the things that some people told me about my life.
Good.
Yeah.
So it's not just your story. Other people, you quote other people in the book.
Well, like my sister told me that once my father died, I don't want to get too much into the book, but once my father died, I was on mute for 6 months.
Oh my goodness. And
I
you
had
didn't
no
remember that.
recollection, no recollection whatsoever of that.
You said you don't want to give away too much of the books. Where can people still get your books at
Oh,
Barnes
yeah,
and Noble?
yeah. Yep,
Now that I see a nice poster behind you, it says author Charlie, but I don't see the name of the book on that. What we're seeing of the poster, what are they looking for when they go to Barnes and Noble? What are the names of the books?
Well, they can go to Barnes and Noble, they can go on Amazon.com and look at the books. I do operations for all my books. Like my first one here is Operation Enlighten. It teaches people self-protection through using your head instead of using your hands. And this one's Operation Battle of a Lifetime, and Operation Tip, and Operation Happy Mind. The only one that's not Operation is the first one of my memoirs. But you can find them all on lifelongexperience.net. That's my website. And that directs you to Amazon.com, and you can buy them on Amazon.
Well, you said you had a very successful day at Barnes and Noble autographing books, and all of them, they
Yes.
sold out.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that says there's a lot of needy people who need to hear what you have learned, and you are writing these books to help people.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think even now, especially now, people need to have positivity in their life, and they need to be able to protect themselves. I mean, what I see in the news, I won't get into, but what I see in the news, I'm astonished at what's going on.
Right.
We all got to protect ourselves in a lot of
It-
different ways.
And you indicated that when you were properly diagnosed, that's when your life started to really change.
Yes.
And what were some of the steps you took to make a change in your life?
Coping skills, like one thing I've always wanted to do was martial arts. And I got into martial arts, the Gardner Martial Arts Academy, out by where you guys are at. I'm still going there. Vinny Smith is one of my best friends, and he's my sensei out there. And just yoga and mindfulness, meditation, just positive thinking. Like affirmations too. Like I woke up every morning that I was a homeless vet thinking what happened to me yesterday is not going to affect me today.
That
And
is very good advice to give everybody.
yeah. You got to create like an affirmation that's for your situation. Yeah, in order for it to be strong. And I got all about that in my book, Positive Thinking Workbook.
Well, I read that your books are based on your lifelong experiences. And frankly, I expected you to be an older man. We hadn't met before. And do you mind if I ask don't ask me how old I am, but can I ask you?
I'm 47 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, I look younger than I am, but I'm 47.
Yeah, you do look very young.
Yeah.
And it's fair to say that about half your life you were troubled
Yeah,
and not realizing why.
yeah. Since I was a kid, I
More than
went
half.
through a lot of life thinking that the world owed me. I went through a lot of life thinking that I was cheated out of life. But I came to realize that I'm not, in a lot of different ways. What happened to me in my life was a blessing.
Well, very often we can see people who come from the same circumstances or the same situation, and some people succeed in spite of it and make something of themselves, and other people just aren't able to make changes like you've been able to do.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned when you first wrote to us about being on the show, and I thank you so much for your willingness to come on the show. But you mentioned that you do work, and you do a lot of research, not just from your own experiences, but you discuss addiction recovery as well as PTSD, positive thinking, and mindfulness and self-protection. Which one of those would you like to talk about today first?
Talk about addiction, because I think there's a lot of people out there that, because of the pandemic, they're stuck inside their homes. And a lot of them, I want to think that a lot of people are doing good in recovery, but with my experience in recovery, I know that this can be a really hard time for them. So, like I was saying, my book, Operation Battle of a Lifetime, I wrote shortly after my cousin died of a drug overdose. And I followed in his footsteps a lot until the military. I idolized him. And if I didn't go into the military, I would have probably went right with him a couple years ago. And that, that stays in my head, that I'm lucky that I went in the military.
We do hear that this pandemic has caused an increase in things like domestic violence. And like you said, with alcohol and drugs, people might imbibe more than they would have if they weren't in this isolated situation. But we're all in the same situation, and what can people do about it?
Get help. There's online meetings that you can go to on Zoom, like Everyday Miracles in Worcester has a online meeting. If you look up their Everyday Miracles on Facebook, you'll see that what times their meetings are at. But they have meetings like every day for people that are struggling. And just coping skills, just you got to figure out what coping skills work for you, because meditation works for me, but some people try meditation and they can't do it. They think that their mind has to be still while they're doing it, and it doesn't have to be. I do meditation, and every time I do it, I have racing thoughts going through my head. But that's okay, and a lot of people don't think it's okay. But my book has a lot of different coping skills in it. I put in the 8 dimensions of wellness in the book, and like environmental wellness, and I put coping skills to go along with those 8 dimensions of wellness. Like in environmental, there's feeding ducks and birds, going to a park and feeding ducks and birds, or plant a garden, or go for a walk, do yoga, anything that's gonna help you remain calm in your head, and calm the racing thoughts that are going on in your head.
Well, you are a voice of experience. You're not somebody who's just researched and studied a topic. You've lived through a lot of these things, and you know what has worked for you. I don't know if this is going to be too sensitive for you to talk about, but many of us have no really concept of what it's like to be a homeless person. And I think it's a disgrace in our country that there's ever a vet who's homeless. It shouldn't happen. But how were you able to transition from that? And what's the success side of that? You obviously have a home these days. And
yes.
Are you working besides writing your books?
I was, up until the pandemic.
Right.
I was helping people with autism and different mental disabilities, bringing them out into the community and integrating them into the community, stuff like that. But to get onto homeless, Yeah, my life's an open book. I'll talk about that. I went into homelessness because my uncle and my grandfather died a month apart. And I really got into a deep, dark depression because of it. So much that I tried to commit suicide. And at that point, it's like 13, 14 years ago, at that point, I wasn't able to live where I was living. So I ended up in the streets of Boston. And in that area, I found eventually veteran shelters where I was able to stay. And I bounced around from shelter to shelter for about a year or two until I ended up in the Massachusetts Outreach Center in Gardner. And when that happened is when I really started getting back on my feet. But in places like Court Street Shelter in Boston, that was one of the worst places that I've ever been in. Just a lot of people, and really, I don't want to talk bad about it, but it wasn't. Yeah.
But it's good to know. It's good to know there are people in our area that did help you.
Yeah.
Taught you some ways to cope.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people when I worked in a detox for a little while. And I volunteered at Veterans Inc. and Jeremiah Zen, and I told them, every piece of paper that you get about a coping skill or something, keep that. Now, look at it, go back on it, because that's going to help you. You know, a lot of people sit in meetings and they can't wait till it's over. But if they soak it in, they let it resonate in their head, that's when they're going to pull through and they're going to succeed.
Well, we've heard that somebody has to reach bottom before they start doing what you just said, taking everything to heart and trying to change their lives.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I do. Yeah. A lot of people. I mean, change can happen in any time. I was talking to someone the other day about when I quit smoking 5 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I have a 70-year-old kid that wanted me to quit. I have his sister wanted me to quit. Everybody around me wanted me to quit. I wasn't going to quit until I wanted to. In my heart, you know, I wanted to quit as much as I wanted to breathe. And that's when I quit. And that's when change has to be made.
But it's not easy, is it?
No.
Not at all.
No, you gotta want it.
We don't have a lot of time, but I want to touch upon something else that you've spoken to groups about speaking of young children, bullying and prevention of bullying and how to react to bullying. Were you bullied as a child?
I was. Yeah, I was. I lived in Arizona and Texas. I lived in a Navajo reservation in Arizona, and I lived on the Mexico border. And in both places, I was one of the only white kids, and I was treated as such. And I was bullied. I know what it's like to be bullied for the color of your skin. Let's put it that way. And a lot of people ask me, you know, if I'm racist after that, and I told them that my son is half Spanish. So I'm not. But yeah, I got bullied a lot. And then when I came back to Massachusetts, I got bullied because I didn't have any parents. So I lived with a lot of bullying when I was growing up. I'm coming out with a book, hopefully in the next couple of months, a children's book about bullying. And that's one thing I don't have anything on it with me, but I'm gonna have a robot as the main character. It's not going to be a boy. It's not going to be a girl. You're not, not going to be able to, know what nationality it is, because bullying happens to everybody.
And we tend to think it's more prominent now than it's ever been, but it's always been around.
Oh yeah,
People
definitely.
didn't talk about it, I guess, and now
Yeah,
they do. How much of an influence do you think the violence in movies and video game violence, does that affect bullying, in your opinion?
I'm going to say that it depends on the person.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody looks at the Daredevil show that's on Netflix, and they look at all the violence that's on that, and they think it's okay, they might act out in the same way. Or any other the violence on games or what have you. But some people are going to look at it and it's not going to affect them.
Good point. And that's true of so many things in life. We only have a couple of minutes left. I want you to address two things. One, what's the most important advice you can give anybody to help themselves improve their lives?
Keep hope in your heart. Hope that things are going to get better in the pandemic, in life in general. Just keep that love in your heart.
Would you have ever believed that you would become a published author?
Again, I had a conversation about that, and no. I never thought as a child or a young adult, I would have never thought I would have been an author or talking about what we're talking about now.
So you're living proof that, as my previous guest said, don't people think, I can't believe I could do that, and here you are.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of people who say I should write a book. There's a lot of people who want to be writers but don't do anything about it. Do you have a discipline for how you write, or is it just when you feel moved to put something on paper?
I start at the beginning. I have an idea. Like, I'm working on a book about changing your life. And I came up with a lot of different topics that you need to be able to change your life. And those are going to be paragraphs. And I'm going to talk about each one in each of the paragraphs. I've honestly written books in different ways a lot of times in my 5 books. So I don't have like a set way in stone that I write.
Okay. When we can get back in the studio, Charlie, and when your other book comes out, we're going to have you on again, and we'll talk about that. But thank you so much, and I hope I didn't embarrass you with any of my questions. I appreciate your willingness to tell it like it is. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Can I give my website one more time?
Sure.
It's lifelongexperience.net.
Okay, lifelongexperience.net. Well, thank you, Charlie Smith, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you. I look forward to it, and thank you. This was a great opportunity for me.
Well, my pleasure. And let me tell you, viewers, who will be with me next week, we're doing a program with the North Central Mass Chamber of Commerce. Roy Nascimento, who is the president and CEO of the chamber, and Kathleen, better known as Kat Deal, is the event coordinator. And they're going to be with me to talk about their upcoming annual meeting, which has to be reconstructed, basically. And then we're also having Jerry Caruso. And Jerry is a local comedian who does a lot of really good fundraisers, and he's always a fun interview. So I hope you'll join me again. This is Barbara Foster saying good night, and God bless you.